Young Earth Creationists claim that the universe and the Earth are only 6 to 10,000 years old. They claim this based upon a hyper-literal reading of early Genesis. Well, the Bible is true, but the way we read it may not be. One way we can test whether we are reading the Bible correctly is to see if the implications of our interpretation mesh with what we know from our study of God's creation. In the case of Young Earth Creationism, the literal reading of early Genesis fails. The Earth is old. In some ways, it is easier to believe in a flat Earth than in a young Earth. In this video, I will look at just a tiny bit of the evidence that the Earth is old. Hey there, I'm John and welcome to my channel. We discuss challenging and interesting aspects of Christianity and Scripture here, like controversies over the age of the Earth. Now, it is clear that the universe and the Earth are much older than 6 to 10,000 years. The current scientific estimates are that the universe is about 13.8 billion years old and that the Earth is about 4.5 billion years old. Evidence that the universe and Earth are older than 10,000 years comes from a variety of independent sources. One piece of information that helps cosmologists place the age of the universe at 13.8 billion years is the speed of light, which is about 182,000 miles per second. Because light takes time to travel, when we see an object, we are actually seeing it as it was in the past. In everyday life, this lag is infinitesimal, but in astronomy, it can be enormous. If we know the distance between us and, say, a distant star, then the speed of light allows us to calculate how far back in history we are observing that star. When you look out in space, you're looking back into time. The further across space you look, the further back in time you see. Since we know the distance of very far away objects, we can measure how far back in time we are seeing them. Another means of dating the universe takes advantage of the fact that it is expanding. Celestial objects are getting farther away from us. We can measure how quickly it is expanding, then use math to put that process into reverse and calculate how long it would take for all matter to reach the same point, thus establishing the moment of the Big Bang. As expressed by Hugh, Christian scientist and leader of the organization Reasons to Believe, the spreading apart of galaxies through time provides direct evidence of the continuous expansion of the universe from an infinitesimal volume. The maths, as my British friends would say, reveal a universe that is very old indeed. Now, to see that the Earth is older than 10,000 years, we don't need space telescopes or other high-tech methods. James Hutton, who lived in the 1700s and was known as the father of geology, observed that the features of the world around him, be they a coastline or a cliff, were the result of continuous cycles of sedimentation and erosion. Further, these processes took so long that the geology he observed could only be explained in the context of a very old Earth. Deserts are a good example of an environment that takes a long time to develop. As Christian geologist Davis Young notes, it takes time, of course, to erode bedrock to a sandy condition and to blow the material into dunes. Although we don't strictly need it, there are plenty of data within modern science to establish an old Earth. We can obtain an upper boundary of the age of the Earth by dating the age of our solar system, which is just a part of the universe. The oldest meteorites found on Earth, which presumably formed at the time of the birth of the solar system and arrived on Earth afterwards, have been dated to 4.53 to 4.58 billion years old. A lower boundary is found by measuring the age of the oldest rocks and crystals found on Earth. These are in Western Australia and have an age of 4.3 billion years. It is likely that the Earth is older than this. For one thing, it is expected that there were rocks that existed prior to 4.3 billion years ago, but were destroyed through tectonic activity or have not been found yet. Also, we have moon rocks obtained from NASA missions, which have been dated at 4.4 billion to 4.5 billion years of age. We believe that the moon is a little younger than the Earth, having been formed by a titanic collision between the newborn Earth and a Mars-sized object referred to as Theia. The current best estimate for the age of the Earth is thus about 4.5 billion years. Now, at this point, a brief discussion of radiometric dating is warranted, as this technique is responsible for much of the evidence of the age of the Earth. Here's how it works. Some of the elements that make up rocks and other matter are not stable. These unstable radioactive isotopes decay, losing particles and thereby some of their weight, and do so at a predictable rate. When you know the starting composition of a sample, when the rock formed, and the ending, present composition, then you can calculate how much decomposition has taken place. And since we know the speed at which the decomposition happens, we can measure how much time has elapsed since the rock's formation. In a way, it's similar to an hourglass. For those wanting more detail, I may release a separate and short video on radiometric dating. Now, we know the science behind this is really sound. And there are like 40 types of radiometric dating. And when multiple methods are used on the same object, they agree with each other. They also agree with other types of dating, other ways of measuring age. So this is rock solid, no pun intended. Returning to the evidence, tree rings also show us that the Earth is not young. By counting rings, we can tell how old a tree is. This method has been cross-tested and found to be consistent with the results of radiocarbon dating. Among the oldest trees in the USA are bristlecone pines in Nevada, which go back 4,800 years. Now, when dead trees are preserved via petrification, these older tree rings can be appended to those of the living trees in order to produce a longer timeline. As Steve Webb writes, such age dating has been done with great confidence and repeatability back to 10,800 years in oak and pine trees in Poland. Now, lake varves are similar to tree rings. Each winter and summer season, in lakes that freeze in winter, contrasting layers of sediments form at the bottom of the lake. These can be counted to determine age since, under ideal circumstances, only 2 layers form per year. One such lake with ideal circumstances is located in Japan and provides a deposit record of over 50,000 years. Ice cores also reveal that the Earth is old. In parts of Antarctica and Greenland, ice layers form every season or year on top of the previous layer. For relatively young ice cores, layers can be counted, much like tree rings. For older ice cores, radiometric analysis can be used on gases trapped in the ice. This second method was used to show that a recently excavated ice core in Antarctica contains ice that is 2.7 million years old. Now, plate tectonics also provides evidence for an old Earth. Basically, mountains grow as plates in the Earth's crust shift, and this occurs steadily over a very long period of time. Given Mount Everest's growth rate of ½ an inch per year, we can see that it has been developing for far longer than the 10,000 years allotted by the Young Earth model. Dinosaur bones also point to an old Earth. We have found a lot of them, and many are dated to more than 200 million years of age. Furthermore, we have fossil evidence of aquatic unicellular life from billions of years ago. The fossil record in general provides strong evidence of an old Earth, and also shows that animals and plants existed long before humans. Coral reefs provide yet another reference point for the age of the Earth. Getting an approximate age for a coral reef is simply a matter of dividing its height by its growth per year. Living corals are colonies of animals that inhabit shells made out of calcium carbonate. The growth rate is dependent upon extracting dissolved calcium carbonate from the ocean, and there just isn't a lot of dissolved calcium carbonate in ocean water. So coral reefs grow just a fraction of an inch per year. A group of coral reefs in the Pacific, called the Eniwetok, appears to be 200,000 to 300,000 years old, and portions of the Grand Bahama Reef appear to be close to 800,000 years old. Now, genetic science also points to an old Earth. Analysis of the human genome reveals that our species has been around longer than 10,000 years. One dating method uses the molecular clock. Molecular clock analysis estimates the timing of humanity's origin and spread around the globe. Geneticists first estimate the rate at which mutations in DNA occur, then the amount of mutations that have accumulated in the human genome over time. With this data, they can estimate how long we have been in existence as a species. Now, the above is an incomplete list of the available evidence for an old Earth, but I trust it is enough to make my point. It is certainly no exaggeration to say, as Ken Miller does, that young Earth creationism requires a full frontal assault on virtually every field of modern science. Now, young Earth creationists respond with various objections, of which I'll mention but a couple. One is the apparent age theory, that God created the world with an appearance of age by giving light from distant stars a head start toward Earth, and by creating apparently old geological formations. I simply don't find that argument to be credible. It would imply, for instance, that God placed in the ground bones of dinosaurs that never actually lived. Another YEC assertion is that the laws of physics, or at least the values of important parameters, changed after the flood. Yet as David Snoke points out, one cannot change the values of any of the constants of nature by more than a fraction of a percent without making life as we know it impossible. For example, the energy emitted by the sun depends sensitively on the speed of light. If the speed were a little faster, the sun would burn out rapidly. Likewise, I dismiss conspiracy theories out of hand. As Justin Barrett relates, conspiracy theories about scientists piecing together ordinary bits of bone to make dinosaurs, or relying on faulty radiocarbon dating techniques to argue that the Earth was hundreds of millions of years old, became increasingly absurd once I got to know the science and scientists firsthand. The degree to which they are willing to publicly fight each other over seemingly trivial matters, the way jealousy and competitiveness leads to savage personal integrity attacks, and the fierce independence of many scientists all make widespread conspiracies very unlikely indeed. So it seems to me that God's book of nature tells us that the heavens and the earth were created much more than 10,000 years ago. The age of the earth is one area where we should let our science and scientific knowledge assist us in our biblical interpretation. So that's it for now. If you obtained value from this video, please hit the like button and consider subscribing. Until next time, God bless.